First Spin. Welcome to First Spin, a show where I learn about how to use the parallax propeller without having any prior programming experience. And rather than do this on my own, I have enlisted the help of two experts. Happy New Year!
Not this week, you didn't.
Year. That's true.
Roy and I did not help you on this week's project.
That is absolutely true. Roy was off cavorting,
Cavorting. I wasn't cavorting. I was on vacation.
Traipsing around town with friends and family.
With a feather in his hat.
Whisker.
I had no hat and no feather.
And no wheat. And Whisker was working on music, which was excellent because I needed the music to help work on the epic project of the epic 2013. Do you realize it is the new year today? Happy New Year!
Well, yeah, I suppose when this goes up, it will be.
Yes,
yeah, it's New Year's Eve right now.
Technically, and we are going to celebrate with Minecraft TNT.
We do a lot of time traveling on this show, but this time we're doing a multi-year time travel jump.
It's true. Oh, man. Big deal. So, for those who are like avid fans of First Spin, you may also follow us on like Twitter, and you may be in our IRC, and you may also be on the Parallax forums. So you've probably seen exactly what I'm going to be talking about today, which is PCB work with a propeller.
You're going to have to give background on this for those who don't follow your every move.
Okay. My remove.
Your every move?
Oh, my every move. I see. Okay. Why wouldn't you? Okay, so... last year, first I started with a propeller, right? And I wanted LEDs to go blinky blinky. And I said, well, I'm a nurse, so I'm going to make LEDs go blinky blinky in the form of a heart pattern or a heartbeat. Lub dub. And so that's what I did. I made it go through 14 rhythms, all accurate in terms of its timing. So VTAC, AFib, good times. No pun intended. And so I wanted to make a PCB out of it because I want to eventually make like a little heart pendant. And I know it's been in the conversation, in the chat for, gosh, I don't know, about a year now. And so I thought it was fitting that now that I had time, it was a good opportunity to pretty much work on it. And Whisker helped me with the initial schematic based off of my Addy style schematic, which made no sense whatsoever to any of the electrical engineers who looked at it.
I make no claim on any errors that Addy has implemented into hardware.
Yeah, hey, Addy's weird, colorful schematic of
Did you like it? Dude, it was great.
I didn't like it because it didn't make any sense.
It was artistic. Absolutely artistic. So I finally got it to a point where I needed it to get vetted by the Parallax community. And so I sent it to the forums and said, guys, I need help. And many of you helped. And so I truly, truly do appreciate that. So I thought it'd be good for us to just go over some of the basics that I've learned of how you would take a propeller chip and break it out, or I guess put it on a breakout board or however you call it, so that you can actually use it in hardware form. Does that sound okay, guys?
Yeah.
Now, have you guys had any experience doing this?
I've never made a PCB board before. I've only done it with like proto board, connecting the wires underneath, like Whisker's shown in videos before.
I see.
Yep. I make my boards by hand with solder and wire.
So I'm the expertiso here.
Well, you haven't actually made this board yet and had it work. So.
I've laid out boards in KiCad, including propeller boards, but I haven't had any of them made.
Have you really?
So I suppose that puts us on equal footing.
Oh, equal footing.
Until you actually get it made.
That's true. And
once you get it made and it works, then you're ahead of
Lane from OSH Park, Open Source Hardware Park, is expecting it, and Jason Todick of Todick.com is also expecting to be my soldering guru. So
he's going to put these together for you instead of you because it's surface mount and
correct.
You just don't even want to touch surface mount. I know you.
I don't. Well, you know.
Wait a second. The Chinese chick is outsourcing board assembly to Connecticut.
Yeah,
that's ironic.
I'm outsourcing board fabrication to what? Let me see, Portland and
Connecticut.
In Connecticut. What can I say?
Midwest. I think
we know best.
The Portland guy goes somewhere else to actually have the boards made. I'm not sure where they.
Oh, does he? I thought it was pretty local, but
it might be. But I think it might be. It's still made in the USA, but
Lane spins them with his spinnerets. He's actually a giant board spider.
I see.
Yeah, I doubt it.
How hobbity. That's because Shelob's in The Hobbit, right? Maybe not. Anyway, we are totally
what's this weed
tangenting. It's so weird. You guys are like waiting for me, and I don't know how to progress. Okay, so propeller chip, 44 pins, for the QFP, which is what I'm using, and the QFP is like the smaller version, but has pins, right? QFN is the one that is the smaller version, but its pins are like tucked up under it, so it's like sitting on its legs. And then what's the other normal one?
QFP.
Nope, QFP is the one with pins. QFN is the one that's sitting on itself. And then
and then BGA.
The DIP. DIP.
Well, there's DIP, yeah, the 40-pin DIP.
Right.
That's the one that I did a board design for.
Right.
Yeah, there's also on surface mount, they have BGA, ball grid array, which I don't think the propeller has that, but that's just another type of surface mount.
We're just going to start listing packages here, Roy?
Yeah, well, that's what it sounded
completely
like.
Completely unrelated.
So
listing packages.
Right. So just a few things. The basics, if you want a crystal, a EEPROM, voltage regulator, which you probably need. So let's go with first the easiest, the crystal. So pins XI and XO are where you want your crystal to go. And that is pretty much that. Nothing difficult about it. The EEPROM, so let me see here. So the EEPROM, the serial clock pin on the EEPROM. So I chose to use 24LC256, which is the same EEPROM that Parallax uses in their boards, at least the Prop BOE, which is what I looked for. Like I looked at the schematics for that. Mm-hmm. So the serial clock pin on that, 6, must connect with 35 on the propeller. And again, I'm talking about the QFP, otherwise known as pin 28. And the numbering conventions are also a little confusing, but if you listen to this while you're designing it, it'll make sense. And then
the package pin numbers don't necessarily match up to the port pin numbers, which is what people get confused on.
Right. So 35 is the package, and pin 28 is the port.
Right.
Right. And then the serial data line from the EEPROM, which is pin 5, needs to connect with 36 on the propeller or port 29. Right. Now, when I was like messing with this, I forgot that the serial clock and data had specific port pins with it, and I like kind of just stuck them on like 43 and 44. And the people in the forums were like, you need to put them on the right pins. I'm like, crap. Yeah. I knew there was a reason why they were in the way. Because they're blocking 37 and 38. 37 and 38 are needed for the prop plug. God. Yeah. Okay. So and then pins 5 and 6 on the EEPROM also need 10K ohm pull-up resistors.
Yeah, well, just sort of a standard I2C
Oh, I
thing.
see.
You want to have pull-up resistors on your clock and data lines.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
And then pin 8 needs a 1 microfarad bypass capacitor.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you
That's
guys.
just decoupling.
Right. Exactly.
It's just
but I didn't know
helping
this.
reduce noise in the power.
Right. I didn't know this. But thanks to the forums. Yeah. So let's see. So crystal, then the EEPROM. And then we have, and I think, so the EEPROM's got 8 pins altogether. And I believe.
A whole bunch of them are connected to ground.
Right. I think all the other ones pretty much are connected to ground.
The optional thing there is that 3 of those are address pins so that you could hook up multiple chips and put them at different addresses in the address space by grounding or setting to pulling to high those various address pins. So it's just a matter of by default you ground them all because you're just putting it at the lowest address. But
gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, and then we have also, I'll skip the voltage regulator for now to talk about also that at every pair of VDD and VSS, so that's every pair of like power
and ground
pins, you need a decoupling capacitor that's as close to those pins as possible.
Right.
And I believe it's a 1 microfarad capacitor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's good enough.
And it's not required. It will just allow the chip to run more stably and cleanly.
Okay.
Some designs only put a couple of them on instead of all 4. But it's best practice to put all 4 around the surface mount chip and do what you did.
Gotcha. Excellent. They kind of got in the way, especially with the reset pin 7, because the other 2 are like, so BOE, which is right next to the reset pin, which is pin 6, and I think the ground pin, like, are and then the VDD pin surround pin 7. So the only way you can get pin 7 accessible is, well, I used vias.
Yeah, you could go underneath the chip backwards.
Right, which is what I did.
And then go around, or you can go through the board like you did with a via.
Yeah. Right. And for those who don't know, a via is essentially a hole in the PCB. So it's kind of like perf boards are made out of a bajillion vias.
Right, but the key is that the via is plated through and it's connecting the signal or whatever power ground signal through the board to the other side.
On a 2-sided perf board, the copper on one side isn't connected to the copper on the other.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Now you can get perf boards that are plated through, but they cost more and they're special.
Yeah. Right. So
the other place where it's difficult is with the crystal and the capacitor, because the crystal connections are right next to the power and ground also. It's a little bit difficult sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's where I also used vias, so that I could keep the capacitor as close to those pins as possible. I had to use a via on one side and then bring it to the other side to connect it in a roundabout way. But and okay, so then in terms of the voltage regulator, it kind of depends on what you're using it for, I think. But I chose MCP 1700, and there's a specific one within that family that gives 3.3 volts and has very low draw needs, which is
very low dropout.
Very low dropout, but also very low quiescent current.
Yeah.
So
both.
And quiescent current, for those who don't know, is the current that chip draws when it's not doing anything.
Some people say quiescent instead of quiescent, by the way.
I see, quiescent.
Just quiescent. So in case people are confused about what you just said.
Oh, I see.
Because there's so many words that sound similar to that.
No, but I mean, it's just, if you don't hear what the word you're expecting, you might not
True.
understand.
Right. So very low quiescent current, which means that if I want my battery to stay viable for as long as possible, I don't want all of these chips to be drawing random current, even when they're not doing anything. Right?
I thought
And
it
the
was.
battery is what, a 3.6 or 3.7?
I'm considering stacking 2 3s, 2 3 volts, like 2 3. I
So
think
you'll be
lithiums.
actually. That'll mean that you're dissipating some heat, but.
Which is known as croissant current.
Haha.
Well, if you dissipate
So
enough,
tasty.
you can make some, right?
Yeah.
I guess you could.
So like another alternative is you could get like a 3.7 volt battery.
Oh.
And I think that part that you chose will still work because it has a low dropout. But
right.
I mean, obviously you should defer to people that know a little bit more about this than me, but.
Well, no, I mean, that's fine. The battery clip, so I'll put a link to all this, but the battery clip was kind of a placeholder because I haven't exactly chosen which batteries I'm going to use.
Yeah.
I probably should, but I'll get there.
Yeah, the newfangled way of doing it is to get a little tiny LiPo battery and just solder it on.
Oh.
And then you would have that sort of stucky tape to the back or something.
Right.
Because those last a really long time and they're really light. But
what are they?
They're also more expensive.
Are they 3? I don't mind if they're expensive, but are they
typically
at least 3?
a LiPo cell is 3.7 nominal.
Oh.
Right. They actually fully charged will give off like an unloaded.
But they could explode, right?
No, well, yeah, lots of batteries could explode.
But exploding hearts
Are
would be
LiPo's
bad.
the one you're not allowed to ship anywhere?
Depends. You can get them.
I know I had a problem getting lithium cells.
Yeah, well, anything lithium, you'll have international shipping problems.
Oh, I see. That's too bad. Yeah. So I chose the MCP 1700, and you got to read the data sheet for these chips to know exactly what they need. I originally just had the battery power going to the V-in on the chip, but it actually needed a bypass capacitor, both on the input and on the output. So that was...
Yeah, that's fairly typical with...
yeah, but I'm a noob.
Regulators.
I'm like, what? I need to add more bypass capacitors?
Well, they're not always bypass. Sometimes they're just filters and other things.
Right. So...
Yeah,
so that's that. Now, one of the more difficult things I had to work around was the prop plug thing. Like, because you got to figure out how to program this, right?
Right.
So
you have to have a prop plug at least.
Right. So
or pads on the edge that you can hook a prop clip to, which is...
Ooh, I didn't know about the prop clip. But so what Dwayne Johnson, I believe, he suggested that I make header holes that you could put a 4-pin header through, hook that to the prop plug, and then you could program it.
Mm-hmm.
And then take out the header, right? After the fact.
Right.
So you don't solder the header in. You just use it as a quick plug, which I think is totally cool. So that's what I did. I made a header, and then I had to finagle and route the traces and figure out where in the world to
get this board.
Yeah.
If it magically, happens to land in somebody's workshop. Joe Grand. So keep an eye out for those 4 holes, and that's where you can change Addie's code.
Oh man.
And hack it.
Yeah.
Hack it to do something extra.
Yeah. I mean, I probably should have put more LEDs. I probably could put more LEDs, just in case people want to use them.
The other thing you could do is all the unused I/O pins.
Yeah.
You could put little tabs, like hook a little trace to a bare space on the board and just make a little square that's not covered in solder mask, so people could actually tap solder wires onto it to add more stuff.
I will address that, but in 2 seconds. Okay? Because I want to first get through this header business, right?
Okay.
So with these headers, So first, all of the 37, 38, and these are the package pins for the prop. 37 and 38 and 7 are part of what hooks to the prop plug. And these ideally need 10K pull up resistors. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and then these also then connect to obviously the header. And then ground is the fourth of this 4-pin header that hooks into the prop plug. So just remember to put the pull-up resistors. And then within the chip itself, you want to connect the VDD together. I think it's something having to do with they like being hooked together. I don't know. You might know better.
I don't know. I'm not sure why. I mean, they're already hooked together outside of that trace that you have going underneath the chip.
Yeah.
You would need to talk to some engineer guy that could explain to you in some weird terms why that's important.
Right.
It's probably only important for certain situations, and they just tell you do it all the time, even though you don't really need it.
Yeah.
Just like traces with 90-degree turns.
Yeah.
For most projects, it'll work just fine. It's only high frequency and stuff like that where you run into issues with 90-degree turns in your traces and stuff like that.
I see. Yeah, and I think a lot of people recommend doing only 45-degree.
Yeah.
traces.
Well, they're just doing that because there's other reasons like 90-degree turns.
Something.
There's some the corner might lift and you might not get as clean as full width in the corner as you would like for the trace and stuff like that.
Addie actually helped me fix a lifted trace last night.
It's true. We were hacking an amplifier or a subwoofer to make some music in the Toymaker household. So, man, those things really lift. It's just like crack. See ya.
You just peel right off.
I'm flying free. So
yeah, I have wire wrap wire, which is like really fine, 30 gauge or 28 gauge wire, and it's still wrapped in like plastic, so it's insulated. And I use that to replace traces connected at either end.
Gotcha.
I use clipped off resistor leads, etc.
Yep.
Yeah, but those are not insulated, so you don't want to lay them over other parts of the board necessarily.
Obviously, Roy, would you like to take a break to list some more packages?
Sure.
Okay. All right, Bubba Peoples. So there's that connection, and then also for the grounds. If you look at the grounds, you'll notice that there's like a trace going to them and then a via. And you might ask, well, why didn't you just put the via under the ground pad? I asked the same question myself because that's exactly how I started it with. But apparently it's very difficult for, like, when it's being made to have perfect contact if the vias are under the solder pads.
I'm sure those things would basically act like a straw.
They do.
To solder.
Right, they do.
Yeah. Your solder pads, you don't want to have a via in them because the solder will just go right out through the via.
Right. So, I mean, I just add a little more solder. But again, I mean, that's if you're hand soldering, not reflowing. Yeah. So, that is that. So that's why the vias are slightly farther away for ease of access, I believe. And what else? Yes. So you might notice around this, you'll see like a red gridded sort of shading pattern and a green gridded sort of shading pattern. The top.
We should mention that when she says that, she means the link that you'll be clicking on that shows these pictures.
Correct. Yes. And I used KiCad for anybody who wants to know. So the top.
For advanced users, just use your imagination. And...
Just think about it. So the top is the power plane and the bottom is the ground plane. So I theoretically could remove all of the traces that connect pins that require power and just have them connect to the power plane. It'd be super easy, but I kept the traces because some of my gurus in the IRC suggested I keep the traces for just in case. So you were mentioning the header, I think?
No, I was mentioning the leftover pins on the prop. There are quite a few port pins.
Right.
What you could do, and this is just sort of like a friendly to hackers like Joe Grand or myself or Whisker,
Jerry,
is you could take all the unused I/O pins and going underneath the chip, run little traces in, go vias through the board to the backside, and then have little pads on the backside for all of those I/O pins.
I could totally do that because the backside is exposed. The front side is actually the one that
right. So that's what I'm saying.
Supposed to have like
there's
the
plenty
epoxy.
Of room. Yeah, there's plenty of room under the chip to make little traces to go in and connect all those spare I/O pins to little vias that go through the board, and
yes.
And you don't have to have all of the I/O pins, but if you had as many of them,
like a few more, or like the bottom, because all the bottom ones are like pretty much
all those
open.
Around the bottom are totally free, and a couple of ones around the top are totally free. So you could it's just sort of a friendly thing on a board like this, because you could, somebody could take this design and maybe not have it cut out in the shape of a heart.
Yeah.
Just leave it square and use it for something else.
Yeah.
Right.
I see. That is true. Although,
plus,
I'm a little protective.
Well, the other thing you could do is that while debugging, you could actually hook things up to those pins and send extra information out.
True.
Stuff like that.
That's very interesting.
If it were me, I'd put like a serial terminal connection on a couple of pins. That was sitting there just waiting for somebody to tap into it. And there would be little messages there saying,
"Oh, that'd be creepy."
I'm in VTAC.
You could have like your project before. You had the LCD display hooked up to it, displaying a text message with what mode of heart rate it was. Right?
Yeah.
You could still have that there, just hanging out on a couple of pins, and if somebody were to hook up a display, they would get that data.
That's cool. That's a good idea. Yeah. That's maybe I'll add those in. I think so. Let me ask. Now that you've seen it,
mentality, you got to leave Easter eggs.
I do. It's true. But now that you've seen it, what do you think? Because
what do you mean? I mean, it's cool. I like the fact that you took the thing that you made on the breadboard, essentially.
Well, no, not like that fluffy, feely stuff. That was last week or 2 weeks ago. I mean, like, do you think this is a viable thing?
Well, what do you mean by a viable thing?
Like, I can make it.
It will definitely, I think you'll be able to make it.
Be makeable.
I'm not sure I would walk around wearing a little real heart-shaped pendant thing that blinked LEDs. But
you're in Eddie, Seattle. You're in Bellevue.
Just make a dragon heart version for Roy.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point, because this is really small, so maybe I could do like a...
Can have some dragon heart.
Super dragon.
Bling, bling, blinkety blink for the ladies. Yeah.
That is true. Maybe I can make it like an egg shape.
I think that the circuit looks perfectly fine, and in fact, like, it's basically a basic prop circuit where you have
so exciting.
The ROM and the crystal and the prop plug, and then you've added a couple of LEDs and a switch, right? So it's kind of like a starting point you could add other stuff.
Right.
It's kind of cool.
Speaking of dragon eggs, I just wanted to say, Parallax Expo, May 4th, 2013. It is on a Saturday from 8 to 6 p.m., and we will be there.
And probably on the Friday before is going to be like a hacking day somewhere nearby.
Yes.
Like possibly at the State Bridge.
Yes. That is correct.
So.
You think do they have hotel rates ready yet?
I don't know. They'll probably announce that a little later on once they've figured out all the details
I
of
wonder if they're
everything
going to
that's
give us
gonna
the
happen.
presidential suite again.
Ooh, yes. It
We
was
were high
awesome.
rollers last time.
Dude, it was awesome. I liked it.
Yeah.
I don't know
Well,
if any of the places in Staybridge are considered presidential, but
Dude, you should have seen our
well,
place. It was
we were staying
rolling.
there, so
We
obviously.
were rolling in sweetness.
Yeah.
We'll talk more
Okay.
about it next week.
Yeah.
Epic.
Well, maybe.
Yes.
We actually have to do some real first spin next week. None of this hardware nonsense. We get back to the software.
Hi.
All right, that's it for this week. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You can find this show every week on Tuesday evenings, firstspin.tv. There's an RSS feed link there if you want to subscribe on your phone, your iTunes, whatever, or you can just listen right on the page. Click the play button. Yeah, that's it. We'll see you guys next week.
Ciao.
later.